Okay. So welcome. Our clinical condition that we studied was stroke. And just kind of an overview, we really wanted to touch on that it's multidimensional, so there are physical, cognitive, emotional, social, many different effects that a stroke can have. And so in this picture, it affects all of the body, and it's just very dependent on where in the brain it affects.
And then throughout our presentation, we're going to see 5 key themes emerge through both our interviews and our research. The first theme is grief and anger as the result of function loss, the influence of social support, the influence of socioeconomic status, the influence of spirituality, and then just the overall effect throughout the experience of the healthcare system. And so we interviewed 2 different subjects for our project. Our first subject, T.S., had a stroke 11 years ago. Her story very much relies on the themes of social support and socioeconomic status, as she did not have health insurance when she had her stroke. She was allowed to stay in the hospital for 6 days before she was sent home without any referrals to any continuing healthcare or therapy. She was basically rehabilitated to a fully functional state through the assistance of her family members. Her sister would walk her around the mall to help her regain her mobility, and her grandson would allow her to read to him throughout the day to regain her speech. And then our second subject, J.A., had a stroke 2.5 months ago. He has a more traditional experience with healthcare, as he's currently receiving PT and occasionally checks in with his neurologist. And much of his story is very dependent on spirituality, as he relies on prayers of others to help him with his recovery. Looking towards their lived experiences, T.S. initially had a lot of grief and anger as a result of her loss of function. She was very upset that she was unable to walk or talk and couldn't do self-care for herself. However, through her rehabilitation, she was able to reach a fully functional state, and she actually is a caregiver for her grandchild. She still suffers with a few effects of her stroke, such as a stutter while she speaks, and she experiences some pain and weakness occasionally, which may make her hesitant to participate in certain occupations. And then J.A. had no major motor deficits from his stroke. Most of his effects are cognitive, as he has some memory issues and is not able to remember people when he meets them again. However, he is 81, so some of his symptoms could be attributed to his age, and he is basically working on finding a new normal in his life.
And then we also analyzed how various performance patterns, such as habits and routines, as well as roles, can affect or can be altered after a stroke. So in the literature, we found that most people may be unable to complete the habits and routines that they once were able to following their stroke. So therefore, modifications must be made, or they may have to develop new habits and routines altogether. For J.A., this was actually a coping mechanism, trying to develop new habits and routines, but most people we found, they view this as being taxing, a chore, very constraining, very inconvenient. And then for roles, for T.S. specifically, we found that this was very much a motivating factor for her. She wanted to get back to be able to fulfill the roles that she held in her daily life, such as mother, girlfriend, sister, because she knew people depended on her. And lucky for her, she was able to fulfill these roles slowly after she had her stroke, but a big theme that we found throughout the literature was that most people, unfortunately, are not able to fill their roles in the way they want to after their stroke. So this can lead to various mood changes, such as depression, anxiety, and just a change in their overall self-image and perception.
Next, we focused using the occupational therapy practice framework, not only on our 2 subjects, but just an individual who has a stroke in general, and we apply this to occupation. So activities of daily living, their rest and their sleep, play and leisure, and their work, just in general of how this would be affected by a stroke. One thing that really stood out to us was social participation, because based on different things that they had, whether paralysis or just difficulty speaking, that their social participation was affected because they had a lot of anxiety over this.
And then finally, we analyzed various environmental factors and supports through the context that we learned in our junior year courses. For the personal context, although we interviewed both a male and a female subject, we learned that ultimately males tend to be more affected by stroke. Also, as people age, the incidence tends to increase. And then also work ethic, we found in the literature, it tends to directly correlate to your recovery and the therapy that you receive and that whole experience. So obviously, if you're more motivated and you have a more positive attitude, that really helps. For physical and virtual, we found that modifications might have to be made to the home environment, and people may need to use adaptive equipment, such as installing grab bars in showers, ramps, or using an iPad to help communicate effectively. Social, as Bethany and Kaylee already mentioned, social support is imperative to effective recovery. That could be through family, friends, or healthcare providers. TS also mentioned how stroke can result in a change in lifestyle pace. Like if like you need to like take more time to do things, then people need to really be like more patient with you and allow you like that extra time to do that. And then also JA touched on the cultural context on how values, beliefs, and a strong sense of spirituality can really help you recover. So ultimately your recovery is dependent on the supports available that you can find through these various contexts. And these are our references. Does anyone have any questions? You're expected to ask questions.
Going off of the temporal, like lifestyle pace, do they have any examples of that, either of them?
Yeah, so TS mentioned that she just generally takes life a little bit slower and takes more time to appreciate certain aspects of her life post-stroke.
Okay.
Tell me, and I apologize if I missed it, but tell me a little bit more about your illness and disability themes and kind of more about, I understand what's on the slide, but tell me a little bit more about what you read about those.
Grief and anger, we saw in TS and we also saw in our literature that a lot of people are initially very like upset and like frustrated with their situation, and it can result in almost like a multiple like different perspectives on recovery. Like TS was initially very frustrated and upset with her situation. However, she like realized being like angry would do nothing for her recovery, which ultimately gave her like motivation. But in one of the articles we read, it referenced a man who just viewed his recovery as very passive because he felt like he had no option but to be where he was in his life at that point. And then, do you want to touch on social?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So for social support, we found that like having like the encouragement and motivation from family and friends like can really help you like overcome those obstacles and just help you be able to do the things that you want and need to do again.
One article that we read that relates to social support too was they did a study using blogs, and they were trying to see how just support in general from like an outside world can really help people with stroke.
And then experiences with the healthcare system, both our interview subjects had very different like experiences with them, so we thought that was a pretty key theme like through our presentation. TS did not have health insurance, so she did not receive like additional therapy. She was in the hospital for 6 days, and that was the last she saw of a doctor until I think like 6 or so years later. And then JA has a more, and as most people do, have a more like traditional experience with healthcare, like receiving like therapy work and then the experience with healthcare kind of ties into our socioeconomic influence theme as if you have health insurance and more money, you're able to afford better like therapies and treatments too.
And then also we read in the literature about socioeconomic status that can also help you afford better adaptive equipment. Oh.
You're fine.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and just like caregivers if like you're needed depending on the severity of your stroke. So we thought that was really interesting as well.
And then spirituality through
That's all we have time for.
Oh,
Okay.
good.
All right. I'm going to get one of just the poster.
Okay, we'll get up.
And